This is Rod, live within your means. I thought I would mention a few things here. People are out looking for a car. If you want to get ahead financially, I strongly recommend that you only buy a car that you can afford to pay cash for. You probably should put some money aside, have some food and money that you've got put aside to continue to pay bills if you were laid off for a few weeks or whatever the situation is. A few years back, I bought myself an extended cab Ford pickup. It was an F-150. I had actually saved up for several years, and I'd saved up. Now, I was a single dad and was actually, well, I had been paying child support, but anyway, nevertheless, at that point that I bought myself an F-150 pickup, I was not receiving any type of child support, but I had two of my kids, and they were younger, and I'd been saving up, and I went to a dealer right after 9/11 with $5,000. I had 50 $100 bills. And it was a white F-150 pickup. It didn't have the four doors, but it did have an extended cab. And it was priced very similar to this. It was around $6,900 that they were asking for it. But there wasn't a lot of activity. People were a little bit nervous at that time, which was really a good time to go out and buy a pickup. And I'd been saving for it and figured that it was time and went out and drove an F-150 pickup that a dealer had. And I told him, that even though I had a lot of miles on it, I thought it would probably serve my purposes for a while. And took it for a drive and took my daughter in it, told my son about it. I may have taken my son and then went back with my daughter to buy it later. But anyway, went back and I talked with him and told him that I would pay him $5,000 for the truck. And I knew that he was hurting. A lot of people were hurting at that time because there wasn't a lot of activity after 9/11 for a few weeks. And he hawed around, and my boy called me and said, "Dad, are you going to buy it?" And I said, "Well, sir, are you willing to do this?" And he said, "Oh, okay." So anyway, he starts writing this up and writing some stuff up for a warranty and taxes and licensing and everything else. And then he started talking about it being more money, and I said, "No, I think you misunderstood." And I pulled out the 50 $100 bills out of my pocket, $5,000, and I put it on the counter and I said, "I told you I'd pay 5,000 for the truck, and that's what I've got. That's what I'm willing to pay, and that's for everything. You don't need to give me any warranty on it, but it needs to include the tax and license if you want to sell it to me." And he's like, "Man, I'm not making anything on this truck." Well, the fact of the matter is, maybe he didn't make a whole lot, but he was able to reduce his inventory and get some cash again to buy something else. But if you're going in to make a purchase, and by the way, I want to mention that vehicle was the most expensive vehicle I've ever owned in my life. When you go through a separation, divorce, it can really hurt you financially for a long, long time. And if you're paying child support or paying money to drive back and forth to see your children, when you're going to buy a vehicle, I strongly advise you to have your cash ready and to go out and negotiate something that you can afford to buy that serves your needs. Don't get a payment, don't get a warranty. In my opinion, the warranties are usually a waste of time, waste of money, excuse me. And but that pickup that I bought lasted me probably 50,000 miles. And then the reverse went out, and I sold it to a man who didn't mind that the reverse was gone. Said he was going to drive it to California, and he paid me $700 for it. Had tires on it that cost me a lot more than that. But anyhow, do look around. There's lots of vehicles out there, and you can find vehicles that meet your needs. Here on Craigslist, there's look at this. You've got all these vehicles, $2,950, $3,600, $2,000. And a lot of the time, these people, or most of the time, they're going to be willing to negotiate some again anyway. But don't be afraid if you're buying a vehicle to find something that has a few scratches in it or minor dents, because unless you're worried about what other people think, and if you are, you're probably not going to be worried about living within your means anyway. And but take a look at what's out there. Now look, you can go buy a Jeep like this for 35,000 bucks, and every month that you drive it, it's going to be worth less, most likely. And you can buy some other newer vehicles. Here's one that's 14,000 bucks. Maybe you've got $14,000 cash and you've got money put aside for emergency. Well, if that's what suits you, go right ahead and do it. What's kind of funny is that for years and years, people have been saying that I sound like Dave Ramsey. And I didn't even know who he was at first, many times that I heard that. Finally listened to him a few years ago, a few times, and I thought, no, I don't sound like him. He sounds like me. He's a good man, and nevertheless, he's trying to help people live within their means, and so I've got to respect that, and I appreciate what he's doing there. But look for a car. Don't be afraid to look for something that has a few little scratches. You care mostly that it's going to get you around. And if you can afford, you've got $50,000 cash money put aside for your bills, and you want to buy a $50,000 pickup, you go right ahead. But recognize that you probably don't need a brand new $50,000 truck. You can probably find something for a lot less that'll meet your needs. And there's a lot of cars to choose from. When you're going out to deal with someone, ask them why they're getting rid of it. One of the most important things you can do when you're looking for a used vehicle is ask them why they're selling it. And if they tell you they've got too many vehicles and they just need to get rid of one, that's great. If they tell you they needed to get something bigger to hold all their kids, that's a good reason too. But if they're just telling you that they just want another vehicle, I'd be a little bit leery, because a lot of time people are worried about something happening, think something's going wrong with their vehicle, they'll want to get rid of it, let somebody else take the problems. And if you're buying a used vehicle, sure, you're going to have some problems, but you know, it's kind of interesting. My boy called me up a few months ago, and he said, and he's rented a vehicle that he had to pay thousands of dollars for when he was going to turn it back in, and actually bought it because he owed thousands more than well than he at that point, because of mileage and everything else. And so he ended up buying the vehicle. There was another vehicle before that he bought too, that one of my friends who's a mechanic tried to warn him, so I tried to warn him too. But everybody's got to learn, and he's doing his best. But he asked me a few months ago, he said, Dad, I know you only believe in paying cash for cars, and you haven't bought any expensive vehicles. He goes, but your cars break down. I said, that's true. Everyone's cars break down. Even newer cars break down. He said, so tell me something, Dad. How much have you spent on vehicles? And I said, funny you should ask that, because I've got the little website that most people have never seen called Live Within Your Means. And right here it says how to buy a cheap car with cash. And I decided to go in there and actually put down how much I've actually spent on vehicles. And because he had asked me about that, I'm trying to think of where that is. Maybe it's on my home page, and maybe it's not. Maybe it's on that other page. Let's see. Cars. There we go. And if you take a look down through this, I talk about all the cars that I had owned and driven myself, other than a few cars that I had bought to sell when I worked for a little dealership. But interestingly enough, I have spent, over the course of nearly 40 years of driving, I've spent around $40,000 on vehicles. Now, granted, some of those cars, like my truck, I spent $5,000 on. I got $700 back, so minus the $700 back, and sometimes I got a couple $1,000s for insurance. on an insurance claim because maybe somebody hit me or whatever's happened. One time I rear-ended a truck and creamed my poor little Subaru that I paid like $2,700 for, and I don't remember how much I got back. But let you know that. There's my boy calling now, but this is Rod. Live within your means. Thanks, and have a good day.